What's up, nerds? Welcome back. Today I'm talking about another book that's not from the big two, but it's not an indie book. This time it's actually coming from Titan Comics, and it's Gun Honey #1. Alright, so I don't know if anybody out there has actually heard about this book. When I first saw that it was coming out, I read the description and I was like, I don't know. I don't really know if I want to read that story. Then I saw a trailer for it on Twitter, and I was like, okay, yeah, I think I will pick that up. So I ended up getting it, and I'm actually really glad that I did, because the story is actually very entertaining, and it doesn't try too hard to be too much of anything, really. It just tries to be an entertaining story, which it does succeed at. So let's go ahead and talk about why that is. So we're starting out with this thing. We're in Santorini, Greece, and we can see we're on this yacht with Santa Claus. Just judging from the robe. He doesn't have the beard or anything, but yeah, that's Santa's jacket. Anyway, so he's looking out over the, at first it looks like he's just looking at the water, but if you can see from the reflection in his binoculars, he's actually looking at the beach. So he's standing there and he's like, nice catch today. Fish are out early, eh? And his, like, bodyguard or whatever is like, yes, sir. And he says, gonna have some yellowtail today. Now, I wondered about that at first, because then even his bodyguard takes the binoculars. He's like, the blonde? He's like, what blonde? So he just says, like, I thought, and he's like, don't think, just bring me what I want. So I was a little bit confused about that at first, but then it makes sense when you come to find out that our main character, yes, this is her. Let's just drink that in for a second together. All right, so the reason why I'm assuming that he called her Yellowtail is because Yellowtail is very commonly, at least here in America, unless you're like a seafood type of person, I think that Yellowtail refers to like a few different types of fish, but more specifically, because I've worked in Asian restaurants, specifically like sushi restaurants, like Yellowtail usually refers to what we call hamachi, and that is basically, you know, like I said, Asian. So she's an Asian girl, and he's talking about, I think I want some Yellowtail, so I'm assuming he's talking about Asian fish. So, yeah. And just another little, like, caveat, just in case anybody has no idea. What we call sushi here in America, most commonly, is not actually sushi. What you're thinking of when you think of sushi are sushi rolls, which is not the same thing. Sushi is actually what we would normally call sashimi or nigiri. That is the actual one, either just like the straight up slices of like raw fish, or the raw fish over a little tiny piece of rice. That's sushi. If you were to go to Japan and ask them for sushi, that's what they would expect you to want. But anyway, did you need to know that? Not at all. Do you know that now? Probably. Anyway, let's keep going with the story, because he sends his bodyguards and they go up to her like, hey, you know, he's inviting you to come to this party or whatever. She's like, okay, well, what kind of party? And they say private. So, a private party. And then she's like, I should put something on. And he says, you don't have to. So that's where she asks him, like, what sort of party? And he says a private one. So then we see this, like, and just, you gotta appreciate whenever you draw a woman just looking so enticing that you just want to keep reading the story. Anyway, so he brings her in, and we see when she's coming in that they're also patting down this other guy, and they're like, yeah, he's clean or whatever. We don't actually know the specific reason why he's here, but we will find out in just a second. So anyway, they're leading her through, like, the yacht or whatever, and then they take her to this, like, private area. Basically, right now at this moment, she's actually in a restroom or a bathroom, whatever. So she's there, and we see, I don't know if you noticed it on the other page, like when we first saw her, if you will look, yes, I know it's going to be tough, but if you will look between her tits, you will see that there's this like big gold thing that's just kind of like hanging there, and it kind of seems like almost unwieldy that would be on a bikini. Well, we come to find out why exactly that is, because as we see when she's in here, she starts like taking off pieces of it, and come to find out, oh, it's actually a gun. So she snuck a gun on here, and then she kind of like hides it up on top of there. They knock on the door, and then she just like flushes to make it seem like she was actually using the restroom. And then that same guy that they were patting down comes in. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, like it must have been something that I ate or whatever. So she goes to hang out in the like private hot tub or whatever, I guess. And then this guy continues like walking or whatever. He's saying, let's not keep, or the bodyguard says, let's not keep Mr. Giannakuros waiting. And we can see that the guy has something like wrapped in a paper towel or whatever. So she continues doing her thing, and then we see a bang, and then they're like, oh shit, like how did he get a gun on here and everything? And she's just continuing to be very nonchalant as she like leaves from the boat. And they're like, where'd he get the goddamn gun? She jumps off the boat and then flies back home. So we can see that she lives with her cat, I'm assuming, because she comes back. And one thing I did wonder about here, why is she still barefoot? Like, there's no real reason for that, but anyway. She comes up and her cat is like, you know, rubbing up against her as cats do. And she's saying like, you couldn't have missed me that much. Like I wasn't gone that long. So she comes back into her home and sees this guy standing here. And he's like, Joanna Tan. She's like, oh, wow, that was fast. Because she's assuming like he's here to arrest her. He must be part of Interpol or just the cops, whatever. So he's like, fast? It took me 2 weeks to turn up this address. So she turns around. She's like, then this isn't about Gianna Kouros. And he's like, who? So she's like, all right, yeah, moving on. So she says, you here to arrest me or what? Because I'm tired and could use a shower. But he tells her, that's up to you, Miss Tan. My job is to bring you in. I'll arrest you if you want. So she says, better men than you have tried. And he says, other men, not better ones. So she's like, you major in cockiness at the academy? To which he says, I'm not a policeman. So she's like, then what? FBI? CIA? He says, my boss wants to talk to you about the events in Rio Verde. And she's like, all right. Let's go. So she kind of realizes like, okay, shit, if you're not with the government or whatever and you're here asking me about a very specific event, all right, yeah, let's just go ahead and go. So we go back over to this where now she's talking to this, well, the same guy and then this older lady too. And she's saying like, I didn't give them the bombs. And they say, or the lady says, no, you just gave them the guns, which they used to get the bombs. She's like, I didn't know. She says, I guess they call you gun honey on the street because there's so much you don't know about weapons. So she just says, like, it's not my fault or whatever that people call me that. Bet they've got names for you too on the street. And she's like, oh, they do. The Iron Maiden, the Burrow Bitch, because no one ever sees me out of my hole, out in the open where they could pick me off. Criminals, terrorists, I wear the names, they call me like a goddamn badge. And I think you do too, Miss Tan. So she tells her, I think you're proud to be their gun honey, daddy's little girl. So she's like, because she went up and like started touching her face. So she like snatches it away. She's like, you better have me in cuffs the next time you try to do something like that. And she tells her like, oh really? You think cuffs would be able to hand you? You think we have a pair of cuffs that could hold you? So she says, I'd have thought Joanna Tan, of all people, wouldn't involve herself in a bombing after what happened to her family. You grew up on the streets in Singapore, Geylang, east of the river. So we go back to like her childhood where we can see like she was a little kid and she was like helping her dad, I'm assuming, by like stealing weapons and shit. And he, I've mentioned this before in like one of my videos. He calls her Mouse and I call my boyfriend Mouse. So when I saw that, he was like, you did good, Mouse. I was like, I wasn't expecting that, but anyway, basically he calls her Mouse because she's good at getting in and out of like small spaces and shit like that and taking stuff, so makes sense. And then anyway, we're seeing where he also basically like trained her to be able to disarm and like put back together firearms even while blindfolded and shit. So this lady is telling her like, yeah, you basically learned a lot of stuff from your dad, and then you also learned a lot of stuff on your own, like how to be an orphan, because apparently at some point they like blew up her home while her dad was inside and killed him. So she's telling her, like, you should have known, to which Gun Honey says they were just this eco group because they're talking about this specific group of, like, terrorists or whatever. So the lady tells her, like, they're terrorists. I don't care if they want to save the fucking whales. You blow up a building, you're a terrorist. There were people in there, custodial staff, security, 4 dead. So she's just like, what do you want? Shut me down? Put me in jail? She says, what a waste that would be. You're too good to rot in a cell. If we could even find one, you couldn't get out of. She says, Miss Tan, Joanna, you're the best at what you do. We always got to make reference back to that Wolverine thing. But anyway, she says, you get your clients the weapon they need, where they need it, when they need it. You got a taser into the Vatican, for Christ's sake. Well, maybe not for Christ's sake. And I didn't make that part up. That's literally what she said. She's like, well, maybe not for Christ's sake. Anyway, she tells her, like, you just need better clients. A better client. And she's like, and you'd be that client. To which she says, we'll pay your rates. They're high, but we'll pay them. So she's like, sorry, no, I don't work for the government. And then she says something that is very presciently true. She says, every taxpayer works for the government. So she's like, this would just be a more formal arrangement. So she tells her, and that's your part. And what's your part in all this? You just her muscle? She asks the guy or whatever. But she answers for him and says, Agent Barrow, what found you? It wasn't easy. So she just tells her, think about it. Some night you won't be able to sleep because of something you did, something you facilitated. When that happens, call me. So she takes off. She's like, don't wait up. So she comes back home, and then she's talking to her cat. This is one thing. She's pouring her milk. Don't do that for your cats. It's bad for your cats. I realize we all know that as like a trope or whatever. It's bad for your cats. Do not give them milk like that. Yes, they will drink it, but it's actually bad for their digestion. Anyway, and I don't even have a cat, but I grew up with cats, so I kind of understand that. Anyway, so she says, you ever have trouble sleeping, huh? Didn't think so. So again, we see her just in a various states of undress, and I don't mind it at all. Anyway, she gets ready to go off on her mission or whatever. So she takes off and everything. And then she's like saying, they call you Gun Honey. Are you proud? Damn right you're proud. It's not nothing to come to this country as an illegal, a refugee, a 19-year-old street kid and make a name for yourself. You are the best at what you do. Now go do it. And I do like this shot of like the car driving like with the clouds and everything and then the moon in the background. Like, it just looks really nice. Anyway, so she gets to where she's actually going, and then she's kind of like talking about how some men, you know, to feel safe, they hide on yachts off the coast of Greece, so that way they don't have to worry about like any actual government or whatever. And then there are other people who want to hide behind brick walls and have bodyguards and shit in their nice mansions. So she's infiltrating this particular one, and we can see this whole thing, like, yes, she's narrating what's going on, but then we also just get like a very entertaining infiltration scene where she's distracting the guard, and then she sneaks in through this like little opening or whatever that she finds. So she continues thinking this is just a plain regular mission. She stashes the gun where it needs to be and even says, like, you know, I'm not the person who kills people. I'm not the trigger man, but I provide the trigger to the people who want it. I just make sure that it's there when they need it. So she's all of a sudden hears this like sound. She's like, what the hell is that? So she starts going to try and get out, and then all of a sudden she sees like, shit, they're looking for me. I've been had. So she's like, all right, I need to defend myself. I can do this. Like, I've been in tougher spots or whatever. So she goes back to where she literally just stashed the gun just a few minutes ago. And she's like, shit, no, it's not here. What the hell? It was just here. And then she turns around because she sees a silhouette sneaking up behind her, who says, hello, Joanna. So he knows exactly who she is. And she's been had. And that's where we leave off on this particular issue. Now, if you're wondering where exactly this is going, from what I read of the synopsis, basically she's just been, as you could see, she's just been double-crossed by someone who hired her, and now her goal, her mission is going to be to track down the people who fucked her over, basically, and make sure that they pay. So this actually set that up perfectly, like her having that whole like run-in with whoever they were, and then them, I'm assuming like that part was her taking on the mission for them when she was talking to her cat about like, have you ever had trouble sleeping or whatever. I'm assuming that's what that was. That was her saying like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go for it because even though I said I wouldn't, I actually kind of saw her point. So she went for it, and then she ended up getting fucked over. So it's going to be interesting to see where that actually goes. Because like I said, I wasn't sure about the story at first. Then I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, you sold me. Now I've read the story, and I am so glad that I did actually decide to pick it up because it's a great story. Like, it really does seem entertaining. It had the right level of intrigue for me. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of action in it, but this type of story, like this, just kind of like, I don't really think you would call it noir. Just like this action type of, you know, story, I'm totally into it. Like, it really feels fleshed out. It seems like this is going to be something that I'm going to enjoy. So I don't know if anybody out there has had a chance to read it. I would love to know your thoughts on it. Just because, like I said, everything kind of, you know me, I always kind of appreciate the art whenever I can, and this was definitely one I did. But also just the story itself is engaging enough. Like, yes, we weren't given too much like heavy exposition or anything, but we were given just enough to actually enjoy what's going on here and understand what's going to be her motivation going forward, as we saw right there at the end. So perfect. I'm sold on it. I'm ready to see where this goes. I'm just hoping this isn't going to be one of those stories that takes too long in between issues. You know what I mean? Especially with like paper shortages and shit that's going on right now. I don't know. We'll find out what actually happens. But yes, if anyone out there has read this, I would love to know your thoughts on it. Do feel free to share that down with me in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely make sure to like the video, subscribe, make sure you are subscribed, share the video out if you would like. You know how much I do appreciate that. I tell you all the time. But if you're done here, then go and read a book, especially this one. And if not, well, then I'll see you on my next video.